in this tape, her story, I could identify a big part of my life with it. And first time I heard her tape, it was like, oh, this woman's just awesome. You know, I was just in awe for a long time. My sponsor kept saying, you know, listen to it. She's good, she's good. And I'm like, yeah, right. You know, and when I heard it, I keep playing it. She has a very clear message. I truly believe that she's a very spiritual person. And I'm really grateful that we were able to get her for this convention. This is like a dream come true to me. I don't know a whole bunch about her other than I really like the program that she works, and I love her very dearly. With that, I'd like to introduce Doreen P from Washington, DC.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Doreen. I'm a very grateful recovering addict and powerless over any mood-changing drugs. And it's truly good to be here. You know, somebody asked me, was I nervous? I said, you're always nervous, you know. No matter how many times you have to speak or you come up here at this symposium, you're still nervous. Where's the fellow with the 3 days clean? Come on up there. I want you to take these, you can close to your heart, and you can have as many days as you really do. You know, it's kind of scary when you come in here. I remember the first time I heard the countdown. I was just so elated I couldn't stop crying. I almost went to hysterics, especially when we got down to that one day. I said, God, if I had been here, I would run clean out the room. You know, with all the love and stuff that was generated around, it would have scared the heck out of me, you know. So I can imagine how you feel, you know. I know when I first come into the rooms here, I was so glad to get here that I didn't know what to do with myself, because I had gotten to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I just wanted a new way of life, but I just didn't know how to get started, you know. My story goes all the way back to I had stopped using drugs. I had stopped using drugs on numerous occasions, but I just didn't know how to stay stopped. And as long as I was in some sort of facilities, hospital, jails, any kind of institution, I was okay as long as I was there. But the moment that I got out, and once I got out of the institution, seemed like all hell would break loose in me. And I wouldn't know which way to turn or which way to go. I left home at a very early age, at the age of 16, right after my son was born. All I knew is that I needed to get out and I needed to get away. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how I wanted to do it, but I have always been sort of like a problem sort of kid. At the age of 8 years old, I was accused of being raped. And what happened is that I did not get raped at that time, but I was accused of being raped. And my mother and them took me to the hospital, and the police came and everything. And they found out that I had not been touched. They even locked the man up that they thought had did it. And they found out that I had not been touched. And from that day on, my life was like a living hell. Because when I would go out and I would play, people would look at me and they would point their fingers at me and they say, there go that little girl that so-and-so raped. And other people would tell the kids, I don't want you playing with her, you stay away from her. And little boys, every time I go out, they were picking and making gestures at me, hit me this place and that place. I found myself fighting all the time. And I began to start withdrawing at a very, very early age. By the time I reached age 12, I was real chubby when I was small. I had lost a lot of weight and began to develop into womanhood. And I did get raped. And it was a very brutal rape that happened. And when I went home with my clothes all torn and distorted on me, my mom wanted to know what had happened. And I didn't tell her. I wouldn't tell her what had happened. And I remember getting punished for that. And I never did say anything to my mom or anybody else about the actual rape. But by this time, I had developed an attitude of, I really just didn't care. I was going to do it my way, or it wasn't going to get done. So I began to rebel against everything. And that's the way it started out with me. I got pregnant at the age of 15, and I had my son after my 16th birthday. And I remember the first time I ever heard the third step is that I come in one morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning. And my mom threw her hands up in the air. And she said, Lord, please take her. So I can't deal with this, I can't handle it no more. So that was the third step. She had turned it over. And I proceeded to leave home at the age of 16. And when I left home, I just went into everything, right off the bat. A lot of times I hear people telling me stories. They started off with the soft wines, the reefer, and this and that. I just jumped right in the middle of everything and just went whole wild. And this left me on a trail of prostitution, lying, stealing, name it. I've been through that whole gamut of that lying life out there. And I stayed out there for about 18 or 19 years. In and out of jails, in and out of various hospitals, not knowing what I really wanted to do, not caring about anything or anybody, not having too much of an education. I didn't have any education really, because I had gone no further than 8th grade in school. I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't know which way to begin to get my life together. And it was in June of '68 that I got locked up for the last and final time. And they took me over to Women's Detention Center in Washington, DC. And I laid over there for 8 days, sick as a dog. They took me from Women's Detention Center over to DC General Hospital, which is a hospital in DC. There they found out I had a heart murmur. On top of finding out I had a heart murmur, I had a venereal disease that was in the first stage of syphilis. And if I stand up here tonight and if I tell you that I knew what was wrong with me and I was about to go somewhere and see about myself, I'd be telling you a lie. Because I didn't know what was wrong with me and I wasn't about to go anywhere to see about myself. So you see, I know it's only through the grace that I'm standing up here to support you tonight. Because all that's in me, I should either be a dead woman or with syphilis and ate my brains up. And I began to start struggling to get back. But I didn't know how. Here I am, uneducated, unskilled, not knowing which way to turn, don't want to go back to my family because they don't understand me. Hell, I didn't even understand my own self. So how could anybody else understand me? But I think this is the time that God looked down on me and said, Doreen, enough is enough. I made probation, and I went into the first halfway house that was open for women in Washington, DC. And when I went in that house, there was no women in that house at all. And what happened was, they was trying to get the house together for all other women to come into the house. And what I had to do, I had to help to make curtains, fix the house up, wash woodwork, set the rooms up and everything. So I put a part of me into that house. I've never went through any therapeutic environment or anything. But I know today what I did was therapeutic. And once we got the house set up, they began to get girls in the house. And a lot of these girls that came in the house, a lot of them were my peers. Women I had shot dope with, women I had exchanged money, clothes, hustled with, name it, the whole gamut I've been through with. And I was in that house about 9 months before these women come in. So you see, I felt kind of solid being in that house, and I felt safe being in that house. And I wouldn't go anywhere unless I went with the counselors or so. And after these women began to come in the house, and the house began to start getting filled up, I'll never forget the director come to me one night, and she says, Doreen, she said, I don't have anybody to cover the midnight shift. Do you think you could handle it for me? And of course, immediately I said right away, yes, I can handle it. But little did I know, that was my beginning of working on Doreen. She left me in that house at night with these 10 girls. And of course, you know how we are. They had rules and regulations set up in the house. A certain time you couldn't go down in the kitchen after a certain hour. The kitchen was locked. But I happened to have the keys. So here come my buddies. They come into the office. I'm sitting back in the office with my feet up on the desk, like I know something. And the girls come in and they start talking about this and about that. You know how we lie. But what we done had, what we're going to get, they ain't had shit, and they ain't got shit, they ain't going to get shit. And felt at home. I felt like I belonged. And one of the girls said the magical word. They said, Dad, I sure would like to have a cup of coffee. I said, let's go downstairs and make some coffee. And I said, well, you know, that door's locked down there, and we ain't supposed to be down there no way. She said, well, you got the keys. I said, yeah, but we ain't got no business going down. Oh, shoot, we go down there, we clean up, and nobody never know we've been down there. I said, well, okay, fine. And I call this wearing 2 hats. And I'm saying this to you for a reason. And I want you to listen to what I'm saying. Wanting to be all right, not knowing. You know, we're people that we don't have no in our vocabulary. We don't like to say no, because we don't like no to be said to us. And still wanting to be all right regardless of what. So when we get downstairs, I'll never forget, we had pork chops, mashed potatoes, and spinach for dinner. So one of the girls said, dang, I'm hungry. I said, I wonder if we got any pork chops left. And I said, wait a minute, you know, we supposed to get the coffee, we ain't gonna touch nothing else down here. And she said, shit, hungry as I am, I'm gonna get me a pork chop. I don't know what's wrong with you, you must be crazy. So before I knew it, I had barricaded the Frigidaire. I said, ain't nobody getting no pork chops, no coffee or nothing, everybody at the kitchen. Because I was ready to die if anybody came near that Frigidaire. So finally they talked me into just getting the coffee and not touching any of the food. So I said, all right, get the coffee. My whole attitude, everything had changed. So once they got the coffee, we cleaned the kitchen up and they went out of the kitchen. and I put the lock on the door. It was like a great weight had been lifted off of me. And I went upstairs, getting ready to express and explain myself why I wouldn't let him touch that food down there. But by the time I got upstairs, they were upstairs, and the girls was talking about me like a dog. Said they done gave that bitch a pair of keys, and she lost her mind. That's the government's food, and she really was gone crazy. They talked about me like a dog, and I felt that small. For the first time in my life, I felt loneliness. I felt alone. I needed somebody to be with me. I needed somebody to talk to me. I needed somebody to tell me, Doreen, it was okay. Doreen, what you did was right. Well, I had nobody. I call this a desert experience. God just had me there with nobody to stroke me, nobody to say anything. And I had to go through this all alone. And I backed back up in the office, feeling very low, very down, and very low. The next morning when the director come in, she asked me, Doreen, how did it go? I said, oh, it went fine. And when I come out of the office, the girls was coming down the steps. And they said, there she go there now, with her crazy self. And I run back in the office, and I told the director, I said, no, it didn't go fine. She said, what happened? And I told her what happened. She said, well, did you learn anything out of that? I said, yeah, I couldn't open the kitchen door. So she said, okay. The next night, they asked me to watch the house again. Now, you know I didn't want to be bothered. But of course, I said yes. And you know, we're people that forget. And the next night, here come the girls again, back in the office, talking. And one of them said, I sure would like to get some coffee. And I said, you know, if I was y'all, I'd get a petition. And I had everybody sign that petition. Because for real, y'all should have some kind of snacks or so up here for y'all at night. I said, when Miss Thompson get here in the morning, give her that petition. Because I'm not opening that goddamn door tonight. And baby, talking about having it rough, that first night, I really had it rough. That night. I thought the whole house was going to jump on me. But I sit back in that office, and I begin to listen to them talk about me. And they begin to tell me that I wasn't nothing but a police. I was this and I was that. And for the first time in my life, I had to turn things back into me. And I had to begin to take a look at me. And everything they were saying about me. Doreen, was you ever like that? Yeah, I used to be just like that. I remember the times when I would go to the doctor and I would walk in the office and the receptionist would be there. And all the receptionist had to do was look up at me and say, may I help you? And I would get a stone cold attitude. Who do she think she is? She thinks she's so cute sitting behind that. This woman ain't did nothing to me but asked me, can she help me? But I was ready to tear the woman down. Why? Because I liked the way she looked. I liked the way she handled herself. I wish that could have been me. I couldn't have said that. I'd rather try to tear her down than to try to identify or say, I like the way you carry yourself. And when I begin to open myself up and I begin to start looking at myself truthfully, things begin to happen. I can't tell you how. A lot of people ask me, say, Doreen, well, how did you get your thing together? I don't know. I really don't. All I know is that for 8 years, I staggered or I stumbled through life with God's loving arms around me. All I know is that I just didn't want to go back to that lifestyle, and I didn't want to use drugs anymore. So, for 8 years, I just sort of hung in there with no program or anything. But I was at the point where I was desperate and I was scared. And there still was that big empty void that was missing. And when people would see me and say things to me, I would sort of roar at them. What? We are! You know, that's to keep them back up off of me, because I was really scared. Because I was still very weak at that point. Because when I was out there, I loved doing drugs. I loved the way it made me feel and everything. But I just didn't like the consequences of the things I had to go through with to maintain and keep up that lifestyle. So for 8 years, I just staggered through. And I will never forget, I was saying, Lord, you know, is there any other way? You know, it seems like I'm the only one that's trying to get their life in order. And I never forget, I met a fella on the street. And he told me, he said, Doreen, where have you been? So you look so good, you gained weight, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, I've been doing fine, you know, I'm not using anymore. He said, oh, really? He said, oh, girl, the way you used to like that girl and doing this and doing that and everything, you know. I said, I told you I couldn't do that no more, didn't I? He said, oh, come on here, girl. I said, what I tell you? So he looked at me. He said, well, baby, I ain't mean no harm. I said, I don't mean no harm. Even look at your hand with that bandage around it, with that yellow stuff coming out through the bandage. I said, is that the way you want to see me? And for the first time in my life, I began to talk up for myself. So I got named Crazy. Don't mess with Doreen, because she's crazy. Because I would loud talk people when they come to me. I didn't know what else to do. But what happened is that, and we have it in our preamble, that alcohol is one of the oldest known drugs. So by alcohol being accepted by society, I started drinking. I came on as a counselor in that halfway house. And I started drinking on the weekend. And little did I know that I'm a person with addicted personality. And I cannot stand any mood-changing drugs whatsoever. And my alcoholism began to progress on me. And I knew that something was going on. And this is when I run into an old friend of mine that was in the other fellowship. And I sit down and I begin to talk to him, and he had a 24-hour book that he gave me. And I went to my first meeting because they didn't have NA in DC at that time. So after 8 years of staggered, I run into the other fellowship. And I began to start going to meetings. And the first meeting I went into, it was just like, Doreen, where have you been? We've been waiting for you. Because I had never in my life been in a room with people that were so willing and eager to talk about themselves like these people were. And it seemed like it was something I've been wanting all my life, because I never knew how to talk and express or explain myself. So I began to start going to those meetings. And I was in that fellowship for 2 years. And they had started an NA meeting in D.C. up at the VA hospital. And I went up there to that NA meeting. And they was just beginning to get that meeting started. But they didn't have our NA literature. They was using the other fellowship literature. And the room was real dark. They had one lamp in there. And they had all the lights out. And when you go in, you have to look like it. When somebody talked, you had to peep. But by this time, being in the other fellowship, I had sort of exposed myself, begin to let a lot of secrets out. And I'm a firm believer that whatever happens in the dark has got to come to light. And things fester in the dark. And I did not want to go back into the dark. And this is where I found that little white book of ours, of Narcotics Anonymous. And I began to read that book. And I like everything that I read in that book. So I got the number, and I called the World Service in California. And I talked to Jimmy Kay. And Jimmy Kay explained to me what the Narcotics Anonymous program was about. And he sent me a starter's kit. And from that starter's kit, we got over 100 and some meetings going on in D.C. now. But I'm saying all that to bring you all up to date to where I am. Because when I come in here, it was not easy. I had so many false images that I had built such a false brick wall up against me. It was hard to really penetrate. It was hard to really let people in to know who I really was. Because I did not know who I was myself. But until I got to the point, I couldn't read too well. I couldn't spell too well. And I couldn't write too well. But until I started telling people, I don't read too well, could you help me with this? Or could you spell certain things for me? Only then did I begin to get the help that I needed. It's a lot of us that come in here that are really ignorant. And a lot of us don't pay any attention to that. You get somebody in a meeting and you tell them to read, and they don't want to read. Find out why. Because that individual just might need some help and don't know how to drop that image to let you know that he needs that help or she needs that help. But when I got into these meetings and I felt so free to open up, that seemed like my life just began to get broader and broader and broader. I was married when I come in here. My husband and I have been together. I had stopped using hard drugs, but I was still drinking pretty heavy. But he was still actively using. And once I come into the fellowship, and I began to start going to meetings, and it was a year before I got my year, that I had a decision to make. They said, don't make no decision for at least a year. Make a decision for at least a year. And the decision I had to make was to stay or to leave my husband. Him and I was not about the same things. He was doing one thing and I was trying to do something else. And what happened, I come home from a meeting one night, and he was having a party with his friends. They had reefer, beer, liquor, wine, and everything all stored across the table. And I happened to walk in, and everybody just stopped and looked at me. And I went straight to my bedroom. And he said, baby, come on out. We party and having a good time. You can come on. You don't have to drink them. Just come on out and sit with us. And for some reason or another, I was very calm. I said, no, you all go head on. I said, I'm tired. When he left out of the bedroom, I leaned up against the door. And I said, Lord, what am I to do about this? And a quiet, still voice came to me and said, go to bed. I said, go to bed? With all this noise out there? But believe me, folks, I got in my bed that night, and that was one of the most peaceful rests I had ever had in my life. I didn't hear anything that night. The next morning I got up. It was one of those, I call it snoofer days, where it was that mist rain coming down, and one of them days where you want to get on the pity pot and just stay there and rock with it all day long. But I got up and something said, go to detox. Go to detox. The house was a mess. I looked all around, and I went out and got in my car and went straight to detox. And when I got over to detox, for some reason, detox was full that morning. And there was a little old lady that was sitting across the table from me. And I know this lady looked like she must have been about 70 or 80 years old. And I'm saying to myself, what in the world is this old woman doing sitting in detox this time of morning? Well, she should be in somebody's rocking chair, praise the Lord, and thanking God for keeping her here this long. And I could not take my eyes off of this woman. I just kept looking at this woman. And all of a sudden, I didn't see this woman anymore. That woman had turned to Doreen. And what come to me was, by the grace of God, go you, Doreen. If you don't, get yourself together and make the decision that you got to make. I'm here to tell you tonight that you're going to have to die in order to live. There is no growth without pain. And the only way out of it is you've got to go through it. There is no easy way around this thing at all. I left out of detox. I went home and started packing my clothes. My husband come out and asked me, said, well, what's going on? Where you going? I said, I'm leaving. He's a very arrogant sucker. You mean tell me you leaving me? I said, I got to go. He said, well, get the hell on. I left out of there and moved into a basement apartment, and I left everything there. You know how when we get ready to leave or move or so, we say, well, I'm not going to leave my stuff, all this furniture, I done bought this, I done got, give me this, give me that. But some say, material things you can always get back. But your sanity, once that gets unscrambled, it's hard to get peace back together. So when I left him with everything. And I have not found it necessary to turn around. I've been through a lot of storms since I've been in this fellowship. I've hurt a lot since I've been in this fellowship. But somehow or another, God has given me the strength to hold on and to rock. Just rock through all the storms that I had to go through with. And I'm here to tell you tonight, I don't care what it is that you're going through with. If you keep the faith, and if you believe and do what you got to do for you, things will come together. All you got to do is stay out of the way, and things will come together. And I'm not telling you nothing that I read or nothing that somebody told me. I am telling you something from my own experience. My husband and I, we were separated for over 5 years. And I continued to keep coming to my meetings and doing what I had to do. And my husband called me one day from the VA hospital. He had gone in to the program with the VA. He stayed up there for 6 months. And he told me he wanted to come home. And I told him he always had a home as long as he knew how to treat it. My husband came home, and we got back together after 5 years. He had his program, and I had mine. He had his network, and I had my network. I did not interfere with him in his program, and he did not interfere with me in my program. He had his meetings he went to, and I had my meetings I went to. We didn't go to the same meetings together, because we had to grow. I had things I had to talk about, and he had things he had to talk about. You know, sometimes when we in these meetings with our man or our husbands or so, we don't really know how to open up. You know, at least we get too cute. We don't want to say things. But I'm here to tell you, until you begin to get that garbage out of you, you're not going to go anywhere. And you're not going to grow. My husband stayed in here for 14 years. He had a massive heart attack. He blew up. His heart literally blew up on him. 2 valves were stayed, 1 was clogged up, and 1 was just barely open. The doctor gave him a year to live. but he lived for 5 years. And I thank God for those 5 years, because we were married for over 20 some odd years. And I just got to know my husband in the last 5 years of his life. And it was beautiful. God had turned him around to do a 180-degree turn. And the day that he died at home. And there was nobody at home but just the two of us. And that was the day that I feared. I feared that day because I did not want to be alone. But it was the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced, and the most spiritual thing I had ever experienced since I've been in this fellowship. My husband died on the 17th of July 3 years ago. And I'll never forget. He come in the house and he looked at me. He said, "Baby, are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine, darling. Are you okay?" He said, "Yes, I'm all right." And he walked around and looked at me, and he went out the front door, and 2 seconds he was right back in the door. And he sat down on the couch across from me, and he just kept looking at me and kept staring at me. I said, "Baby, are you okay?" He just looked at me, and he looked down. He looked back up at me. I said, "Are you okay, Pa?" And he just shook his head. And he got ready to open his mouth. He said, and his bottom lip started trembling like I've never seen anybody's lip tremble before. And that's when it hit me right in my heart what was happening. And I got up, went over to him, and kissed him in his eyes, his nose, his ears, his mouth, all over his face. Told him how much I loved him, and how much I thank God for having him there, and the time that we've had together. I said, "But God loves you best, so go on in peace, baby. It's all right to go home." And he looked at me, just kept shaking his head. And I said, "Don't worry about me, because I'm going to be all right too." And he looked up at me, and he just flopped right on over. All I did was to get down in front of him, get on my knees and pray. Got up and pushed the emergency button, and opened the door and called my neighbor. And that's how my husband passed. I wasn't excited, I didn't scream, I didn't holler, but it was such a glow that had came over me that I just thank God for being there with him. I thank God for having it like that. I thank God for giving us the strength that he gave us. I thank God for the time that we had together. You know, so often we forget about gratitude. We come in here, every now and then you have to stop and you have to take inventory of where you were to where you're at now. And you can say to yourself, it's only through the grace that I'm standing up here. I had to speak in Alabama last month, and a young lady came up to me and she said, "Miss Doreen," she said, "how did you do 21 years? Who helped you?" I said, "Baby, I did it one day at a time, and everybody in this room helped me. I didn't come in here to find out what Joe Bloke was doing or what Sally Oop was doing. I come in here to find out who I was, where I was, and what was my purpose in this life. I thank God even for the storms that he put in my life. Because if it wasn't for the storms, the mother wouldn't be where she is today. I do a lot of inspirational reading as well as reading my literature and going into the basic text and how it works. I do a lot of spiritual reading out of my Bible. I just read the storybooks, the stories in the Bible, like the story of Job. You'd be surprised how much inspiration you can get and the strength that can build up in you. I said, great things that Peter, Paul, and John did in their days. Greater things as the mother during the day in her day. I was that woman that was at the well when God come up and told the woman, go head on. You had everybody's man but yours. But you will be healed. I was the same woman that followed him down and wanted to touch the hem of his garment so I could get cured of my disease. I had syphilis, whatever else you want to name, but I'm all right today. You've got to have faith and you've got to believe. And things, you may not can even see things happening for you now. But if you hang in there, I guarantee you, before you know it, whatever that was puzzling you or bothering you, you'll be right up there to it. Like I said, it has not been easy for me in these 21 years. But I would not trade one day out in the street for what I had to go through it in here today. And things will happen in God's time, not in Doreen's time. But as long as you keep the faith and you hang in here and come on in here and do what you got to do, get yourself a sponsor. And for God's sake, get yourself a home group. Because you've got to get people to get to know you. You know, a lot of us like to bounce here, bounce there, bounce here, bounce there, and bounce here. You know, thinking nobody will get to know us. We're not hurting anybody but ourselves. A lot of us don't have sponsors. You know, the kids are coming up playing with them. My network. What the hell you mean your network? You need somebody to talk to. You need somebody to bounce these things off of. Then you need to get into the steps. Because the steps is what's going to keep you open and keep you working with you. I said, Doreen, what step you on? I'm on the 11th step all the time. Until something happens, I have to go all the way down to the first step. To know that I'm powerless over my addiction and how unmanageable my life can be. Not only am I powerless over my addiction, but I'm powerless over people, places, and things. To thyself, be true. I told you I come in here, I couldn't read or write, and couldn't hardly know my own name when I seen it. But today, the mother's a parole officer. I have my own secretary. Now, who would ever thought that I would be a parole officer? Well, I used to be downstairs in the bullpen. I'd go down and tell them, open them doors and open them wide so I can get inside. And when I get ready to come out, open them doors and open them quick so I can hurry up and get the hell out of here. And I come on out. But you can't tell me what you can't do if you only believe and if you set your heart to it and if you make the effort to get to it and do it, you can do it. The only one that's keeping you down is you. Nothing sits high and look low on Doreen but the God of my understanding. Because when I go out for something, I'm going and I'm going all the way. Even if I get stopped along the way, it's all right. Because I need to be stopped. Because there's something that I needed to carry on with me. Sometimes God puts us in various positions where we have to be alone. He don't want nobody to talk to us. He don't want nobody to touch us. He don't want nobody to understand us. He just wants us to feel the need of His presence. And that's when you got to just hang in there and just hold on. And you got to just wrestle with it. And before you know it, the sun's come up, and everything all bright again. And Slewfoot, he's always lording around, waiting for a chance to jump right on top of you. And a lot of us keep the doors open for him and wonder why. And I'm feeling like this. You ever notice when people say, I don't know what I feel, I just feel so bad. Why in the hell has it got to be feeling so bad all the time? Why can't you just be feeling? You know, sometimes I get up in the morning and I sit on the side of the bed. And all of a sudden I can just feel this black veil come right down over top of me. And I said, oh God, not today. Not today. But thy will be done, not mine. All I ask you to do is just guide me. Just guide me through this day, Lord. And I don't touch nothing. I don't bother nothing. I just go on about my norm. And before I know it, it has been lifted. Every day is not going to be a good day. You're going to have your ups and you're going to have your downs. And you're going to have to learn how to deal with the downs as well as you do the ups. I am just getting some answers to some things I had to do way back there years ago. It's just coming to me. And I said, oh my God. And all I can do is say, thank you, God, for the gift here. And I don't question it anymore. All I do is just get in here and do what I got to do. And before I close, like I said, to me, today I'm living just with the simplicity of life. There's nothing I want. There's nothing I really want to do. I retire next year. And all I want to do is just lay back and enjoy whatever life I got left with you kids and with people. I just give up my home, got rid of everything was in my house. I'm in an apartment now, and I feel fine. I feel fine. The body is getting a little torn down. Well, hell, I'm 62 and it's been through hell. So it's time for something to be breaking down. I have a liver ailment. I have a bad heart. But whenever you kids call me, I try to be right here for you. Because what I got is not mine to keep. I got to give it away in order to keep on going. So I called me and I said, look, they tell me y'all have anything out of the woods. I really don't do the woods, honey. She said, no more, we're going to see that you get in a cottage somewhere. I said, okay, because I don't like bugs and things. I really don't. I was trying to get out of that thing, honey. Well, honey, they would call me. They kept calling me so nice. I said, well, I guess I just got to go. You know. So here I am. So all I can say is just be good to one another. Because we need each other. No man's an island. Take care of yourself. Get yourself a sponsor. Get your home group. And just hang on in there and do what you got to do. God loves you. And believe me, my God didn't make no jump. And for you young kids, hang on in there. You can be and do whatever you want to do. The world is yours, baby. You know, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody but yourself. That's when we get in trouble. Because we're trying to prove everything or show everybody else. But what about proving and showing you? And you can't give nothing that you ain't got to give. If you ain't got no love, you can't give no love. But once you start loving you, it's going to spread out. Somebody's going to say, damn, that's where I want to be. Look how he's treating himself. Or look how she's treating herself. If she treats herself like that, I know how she's going to treat me. My mother Same thing. Come home and died in my arms. She wanted to leave the hospital. Baby, can I come home? I say, as soon as they let you out of here. And she came home the 27th of February, and she died the 27th of March, upstairs in my bed in my bedroom. And me and my mother used to be at it like this. So you see, God has brought me through many a storm. But the mother still got a long ways to go. I'm going on 62. And my mind tell me I'm about 32. But the Bible tells me that I'm about 72. It's like I go out and in the parking lot, when I go out to get in my car, there's a wall that comes around by the parking lot. And you know, you can step on top of that wall and you be right over to your car, right? And I stepped up on that wall one time and fell flat on my butt. I said, oh, God. I went back out there another side of the wall and said, come on. You can make it. Your car's right here. I said, you the damn lie. I'm not following my ass no more. See, the mind will play tricks on you. You know, a lot of times, look, I'm a sick person. Alone up here. You know, I don't get all up in my mind pulling things all out of proportion. And that's what you got to do. You got to believe in yourself. And you got to find somebody else that you believe in. And you young ladies, you know, get your thing together. You know, get you. These relationships, they're going to come. There's some fine looking young ladies in here. That relationship's going to come. And it's going to be about relationship at work. Please try to get your ass together before you start dealing with another sick ass. And the same thing about you men. You know, please get yourself together before you start dealing with another sick ass. Because it takes time to get to know one another. And if you want that Miss Perfect something, then go get you a prima donna statue. But until that, we need one another. Then we got a lot of people in here who's sick that needs us and need our love. And I don't know about up here, but that HIV is spreading like heck in DC, everywhere. And we need to be close to one another to help one another to get through this day and this time. And in the fellowship, you ought to thank God that we got a place to come, that we can talk open and talk about these things. All I want y'all to know is that I love you. Keep coming back, and don't forget, it's going to be all right. And I usually close with nobody but you and it. Nobody but you can make me happy. Oh yes, you heal me too. When I was in trouble, you brought me through. Nobody but you, really. Nobody but you. Nobody but you and me. Nobody but you can make me happy. Oh yes, you heal me too. When I was in trouble, you brought me through. Nobody but you, really. Nobody but you. Thank you.